Good evening on the 447-275 repeater. This is N7GES, November 7 Golf Echo Sierra, and this is the NCARC TechNet. All amateurs are welcome to check in and participate. You can also hear us on 447.750 on Echolink at W0UPS-R. And we're also streaming to YouTube and our YouTube channel, NCARC. We're trying to be able to answer questions of all manner of things regarding amateur radio that people might want to learn about. I usually start by taking check-ins, but also if we have emergency traffic, please say break and your call sign, and we'll certainly suspend the net and let you take care of any emergency traffic you have. Do we have any emergency traffic before I start? Okay, let's see who is listening at this point, and you certainly do not have to check in at this time to participate in the net. We'll take check-ins anytime, but it's just nice to know when we start out who is listening. So who wants to check in at this point?
This is K1DEG monitoring.
Whiskey 2, Mike, India, Charlie, Mark, Loveland, Mobile.
This is N8JAY, J, Loveland.
KC0RBT, Jim, Fort Collins.
Good evening, Kevin. Whiskey 0 Alpha Sierra Papa, Terry in Berthoud, with an announcement.
Whiskey 0 Uniform Sierra Charlie, John, northbound I-25.
All right, we'll start acknowledging people here. W0USC, John, good to hear you this evening, and hope all is well with your dad there. W0ASP Terry, KC0RBT, N8JAY, welcome. W2MIC, K1DEG, welcome to all of you. Who else is in here this evening?
This is W7KRU, Rick, in Drake, Colorado. November 0, Echo Mike Papa, Greg in Fort Collins, with Debbie, K0 Delta Bravo Echo.
Okay, welcome to K0DBE, N0EMP, W7KRU. Good evening, Rick. I think I've talked to you before, but I don't remember for sure, but glad you came by. Anybody else before we start?
Kilo Delta Zero, Yankee Oscar Papa, Scott, Fort Collins.
Okay, we had 2 calls. I only got one. KD0YOP. Scott, welcome. And who was the other station?
Good evening, Kevin. That was KD0 WBC Kilo Delta Zero Whiskey Bravo Charlie Pete, North Fort Collins.
Okay, good evening, Pete. Glad to have you here. Thank you very much. All right. Well, let's begin, I guess, here. And anybody else that wishes to check in, please do so later in the net. We'll call for questions and comments, and at those points, you can certainly check in as you want to make your comment there. So do feel free to do that. W0ASP, what do you have for us?
Hey, thank you, Kevin. I'd like to announce to everybody on the TechNet about a meeting that's coming up here in Berthoud, Colorado at the Little Thompson Observatory. It regards a project called HAMSci, which is a citizen science project coordination between professional scientists and amateur radio operators to try to use the skills and experience and the equipment of amateur radio operators to solve scientific problems about propagation in the atmosphere and atmospheric physics. So there's going to be a presentation there from HAMSci by Nathaniel Frizzell, W2NAF, from New Jersey Institute of Technology, about his amateur radio observations of the solar eclipse, and I'll be giving a little presentation about some of my data as well. This will be Monday, July 16th, starting the same time as the TechNet. Sorry, Kevin. And running until dark at Little Thompson Observatory in Berthoud. And we'll do telescope use after it gets dark, weather permitting. W0ASP, back to net.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Terry, and that sounds absolutely fantastic. And unfortunately, I won't be here, and if I were, I guess I would be busy, but I do encourage you folks to make that trip. The observatory is a fascinating place anyway, and the other the program sounds fantastic. So do take advantage of the opportunity, because it's certainly a super opportunity. Thank you very much, Terry. So we do have a topic for this evening, but perhaps I'll stop first and just ask if there are any questions before we begin, something that we can address at least somewhat briefly before we begin our topic.
AE0BQ late check-in.
AE0BQ. What's the name there, please?
AE0BQ Alpha Echo Zero Bravo Quebec. My name is Daryl, and I'm in Longmont.
Okay, Daryl. Well, welcome, and thank you very much. Did you have a question or comment for us?
Negative. Please continue. Just monitoring for now. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anybody else with a question or comment at this time? usual, we have a topic, and as usual, I'm not here to inform and teach or anything like that, although I'll certainly add as I can. But our topic this evening is amateur radio license levels and why upgrade. You just got your ticket. Why should we do more study and move up to another class of license? Why are there so many classes, and why should I maybe think of going all the way to the top? Or is that necessary? There's going to be a lot of different opinions and views on this, and certainly I think all of this is, we're welcome to hear all of this. So may I start out with a comment from anybody or a question? And do remember to just give me your call suffix, and I will recognize you, and then we'll avoid long doubles that way, I hope.
Q.
Q. Go ahead, please.
Kevin, KE0PUQ. I think probably one of the big things that stopped me from getting my license in the beginning was it used to be memorizing on the Morse code, but technician was fairly easy. The next step, I guess, I don't know if I'm ready to take that yet because I don't have enough interest in it.
Okay, so you're saying originally that code caused you not to feel like you weren't able to get your license at that point, and when that was removed, you got your license, and you're not really sure about why to upgrade.
I'd agree with that. So that dates me because when I got my CB license, because you had to get one back then, that was kind of fun. I didn't have the need for more than anything like that until I discovered FM, and then by then the Morse code requirement had been dropped.
Okay, and you currently have a technician license then?
That's correct. And I'd love to be able to talk around the world, but I just don't have enough time or financial inspiration to do it yet.
Okay, well, that's understandable, and hopefully that will happen for you at some point when you're able to do that. But you at least have some incentive there to upgrade, so that's great. Other comments? Other explanations why a person might want to upgrade? Some of this is obvious to those of us that have been in radio for quite a while. If anybody happens to be listening that's quite new and hasn't thought about it a lot, we might get a bit more of an explanation. Certainly, you probably already realize, even if you're new, that you have a limited set of bands and frequencies to operate on. And most of those, although not all, do not really allow country-to-country or state-to-state communications without the use of the Internet. Although we do have 10 meters, and that allows you some pretty amazing, and 6 meters, I should say, also. Let me reset. And I believe technicians have 6 meters. I will look that up real quick to make sure I know. And both of those bands allow some pretty major distance contacts when the conditions are right. No, I do not see that you have 6, but you have 10 meters as a technician. If I'm wrong on that, somebody set me straight, but I believe that's what my sheet shows here. And I think I copied that right off the listing there. Any other comments from anybody on this subject?
J-A-Y.
J-A-Y, go ahead.
I've got the band chart in front of me. Techs do have 6 meters. But my comment is that I'm a general, and I was a tech for a long time, and I didn't upgrade to general due to simple, good old-fashioned procrastination, which I finally got done. But I got 2 guys interested in ham radio. They got their tech licenses. They both didn't live close to clubs, but could hit repeaters, but they both said to me, no one will talk to me. And that's an issue with repeaters. Friends talk to friends. Club members talk to other club members. But our repeaters are silent so much. But on HF, strangers talk to strangers. It's kind of backwards.
Well, that's an interesting comment. And I don't doubt that that does happen. And certainly it behooves all of us to try to get acquainted with new calls that we hear on the air for that very reason. But we probably do tend to get into habits of talking more to the people we know and not necessarily making that extra effort when somebody new checks into the bands. But as you commented, HF seems to be the way for strangers to communicate, even though there are a lot of friends communicating as well. There's it's sort of built around someone communicating with other people they don't know. So that gives us some inspiration as longtime hams to be very careful about how we respond to newcomers. Other comments, please.
KN. PQ, comment.
Okay, we had 2. KN, I think, James?
Yeah, good evening, Kevin and the net. I've only got you here for another couple of minutes before I reach my destination, but I wanted to throw out a quick example of one reason to upgrade your license that happened in real life over the last couple weeks. Though anybody that knows me knows that one of my passions is DXing, HF contacts outside of the country. Doesn't have to be HF, that just means contacts outside of the country. The world is split up into, 382 DXEC entities that DXers chase. The number 5 most wanted entity in the world, Baker and Howland Islands, out in the Pacific, was just activated for the first time in about 10 or 12 years. It just ended on Friday. And although that was a big de-expedition and wanted hugely by so many people, they ended up operating in the extra-only portions of the band for a good portion of their expedition. So there were probably tremendously large numbers of even generals that did not get to log that country and got no credit because they were operating in the extra segment, and the generals and technicians in the country did not have any shot at it. So I know it's a small faction, but those that are passionate about DXing, just like those that are passionate about any particular piece of the hobby, were probably gravely disappointed by such a thing that only their license class kept them from. KI0CAN, back to you, Kevin.
Okay, that's interesting. And any idea why they may have done that?
I'm not 100% sure. Typically, a big expedition like that tries to always operate in the general section of the band anywhere they can, even in novice section at times, because they obviously want to get as many contacts as possible. I do not know why they ended up in the extra segment other than either band conditions crowding, other things going on, not sure, but they ended up down there a good portion of the operation.
Well, that is certainly a motivator, and yeah, as you said, it may not happen all the time, but wow, that is very, very interesting, and certainly certainly a good motivator. PUQ, I believe you were next. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is AE0BQ, Daryl. Kind of a funny thing, but so bragging rights, right? If you sit for your exams and you get all three at once, and you score high on at least your extra, you know, stick out your wings and flap them and crow a little bit. And the other reason is, of course, all the bands are wide open to extra, and lots of things at the extremes of the spectra that are unavailable to the other two classes. So you have a lot more leeway in as far as the band plan and the recommended usage for the bands, right, or allowable usage, I should say. And that's it for me. Back to net, AE0BQ.
Okay, Daryl. Do you have other examples of things that may only appear in the extra portions that generals and others are missing out on?
Not to hand. I was thinking about firing up a web browser and looking that up. But at the time I took my exam a few months back, I'm brand new, and I'm one of those lucky few that, you know, the Louisville, the BARC gave the exam in Louisville, and they said, we only see that a couple of times a year. So I thought I was very proud of that. I had taken off a year from work, and it was at the tail end of that time, and so I had lots of free time to study, and I probably put 4 solid weeks of evenings into, well, maybe not quite that much, but so at least 2 weeks of solid evenings looping on the exams on QRZ.com and reviewing the study questions as well, so, or the study answers, I should say. I don't have that information to hand, but I'll let somebody else talk and I'll look it up and maybe come back in a second. AE0BQ, back to net.
All right. This is N7GES with the TechNet. License classes. Why upgrade? Interesting stuff here. Any other comments, please?
ASP with a question.
ASP, go ahead.
W0ASP. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand from the regulations is that technician, general, and extra have the same privileges above 6 meters, above 50 megahertz. That there are no power limits or any other limits on a technician class compared to a general or an extra. Am I right or wrong on that?
And that was above 6, did you say?
Roger, yeah, above 6 meters.
EMP.
EMP, go.
It would actually be above 10 meters because unless
unless I'm terribly wrong, 6 meters. I'm reaching for the chart here, stretching the microphone cable. Yeah, 6 meters, I believe, is the same for everybody. It is. So above 10, or put it another way, 6 and up, it's all the same. The HF band, up through and including 10 meters, although techs get a little tiny chunk of 10 to play with, they don't get much. General, between general and extra in the HF bands, there's not a lot of difference at all. Extras get a little bit more of some bands. Other bands, they don't get any more. The nice thing for me was you get all of every band as a extra class. So all you have to know is where the band edges are for amateur radio. You don't have to worry about where your portion of that allocation is on each band, so you don't have to keep reaching for the chart. Most of our radios come from the factory blocked at the band edges and have a nice little beep that they make so you don't stray. But it's not uncommon for generals to stray into the extra portions inadvertently or otherwise. But once you're an extra, you just have to know where the band edges are, and your radio priority knows that for you. So that's a little bit nicer there. And sometimes when you want to talk to somebody on a busy band, like 20 meters, if you can get in, if you want to talk to another extra class, you can get into a little portion of the band that's relatively quiet because it's limited to extra class licensees and 0 EMP.
Okay, yeah, very good. Good points there. Yeah, I know that my daughter, of course, we're going back to CW now. My daughter was able to work 40 on CW as a tech. So you do have that if you want to take the time to get the CW down. But that one certainly is a little less likely for a lot of folks that have just started out and just gotten a technician license, but not unheard of, certainly. Let's see, I was going to look at your comments here. Okay. And other comments from anybody? And this is N7GES with the TechNet. Well, we don't have very many of our amateurs that have been in the hobby for many years. We have a few here. I know that some of them, if they were here, would continue to remind us of one of the other aspects of amateur radio that many of us forget about, and that is to learn the technical aspects of the hobby. As higher class licensees, we're expected to know more of those, that theory and that electronic theory, electronic applications, and certainly by the time we get that far into the higher class licenses, we know a whole lot more about what's happening inside the radio and what's happening from the antenna to somebody else's antenna, and what to do if there are problems. And those are important things as well. Some of that certainly will come by experience. A lot of that comes only by seeking that information. A lot of us may get into radio for the just for the talking, and never quite learn all of those things, especially nowadays since we can memorize the answers, and we're not working quite so much on knowing the information, which I guess in my opinion is unfortunate, but there you go. There's controversy on that one as well, so you know, we can talk about the reasons both way, I suppose, both ways, but anyway, that's another advantage, is the additional information that you learn about amateur radio, which of course you can do without the license class, but it's another motivator to learn a lot more about the hobby as well. Any questions about the various license classes? Does anybody know the history of those classes and why they came about in the first place? Well, as Bart would say, research is in order. I don't have that right in front of me either. That was a question that just came to my mind as we were getting into this. But certainly one of the reasons for amateur radio in the first place was not just for amateurs to play radio, but for study of propagation and radio waves and communications by amateurs, and therefore studying and learning about things was very, very important in those early days, and we always hope still is. But and I suppose then the license classes made it easier for people to gradually move into radio. But I don't know that for a fact. All right, now I've been doing all the talking for the past 5 minutes. Let's have some other questions or comments from people here.
AE0VQ with a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
I did look that up, but I since rebooted the computer. Basically, it gives you full band privileges in all the allocated bands. So there are some, there are a few of, extra gives you that little bit more. So you're actually able to access slivers of each band that the other two classes are not able to legally access. And just going to reset here for a second. I think somebody jumped in with a comment. Now I've forgotten what I was going to add. Learning, the studying business. I think that there's a cadre of people, or cohort of folks today, that are newcomers to myself excluded. I'm not a prepper, but I think there is a cohort of people that are interested in using, familiarizing at least, if not, using amateur radios and SDR and so forth to accomplish the goals in the context of prepping. So when infrastructure breaks down, mayhem is in the streets, zombies are roaming, looking for brains, those sorts of scenarios. So I do see a lot of that on YouTube. That's just an observation. Anyway, back to net, AE0BQ.
KC0SUN with a late check-in and a comment.
Thank you, Daryl. SUN, go ahead.
So I'm just getting into this, so I'm sure you probably covered some of these things, so I'm not going to ask the silly questions up front. But regarding the previous caller there, as far as communication goes, when it comes to the different classes, that's absolutely a good reason, because obviously, legally, you can practice, and practice is the point, because obviously there's an emergency situation and you've got the know-how. You can transmit and receive on any band you want to without any problems, because that's an emergency situation. But it's all about practice. So if you want to get to the point where if there is an infrastructure breakdown, whether that be due to a natural event, some sort of man-made event, whether that be, war or zombie apocalypse, the practice is the point. So once you have the ability to communicate on a large scale to neighboring towns, states, countries, and know the process and the procedures required to make those types of communications, you then are prepared. And I think this is what the previous caller was trying to get to, is that you then are prepared in any of one of those scenarios. And recently we've had some very interesting scenarios, whether it be the hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico, or even the ones down in Houston. All of these things have created situations where people have had no communication whatsoever. All the cell towers aren't working, the power is out. And in those cases, being able to make long-distance communications, especially in the case of Puerto Rico, are very important. And you can't do that unless you practice, and the only way you get to practice is if you have the license. Back to Matt.
Well, that's an interesting theory. That then, of course, would bring up the question, when when is it legal to, or when is the point where we start breaking all the rules because it's no longer important? And yeah, I don't have a good answer on that one. That's another whole area we could get into at some point, I think. But I don't know that now is the time. However, yes, practice. But I would go further and say that in the recent storms we've had, I don't know that I heard reports of people getting on the radio that weren't qualified because it was a major emergency. But what we did have a lot in some cases were a lack of people that were even knowledgeable enough to use radios at all or had equipment to use. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So they had people coming in to help with both equipment and training. Other comments, questions, anything? This is N7GES with the TechNet.
EMP.
EMP, go ahead.
Yeah, N0EMP. Depending on why a person got into amateur radio in the first place, it may be perfectly fine not to upgrade. If somebody just wants to be able to work the local repeaters, either with an HT or from a mobile rig, or maybe they have a spouse or another family member, and or even a couple of friends that want to both get licensed and just be able to do HT to HT on a hike, short range, or again through repeaters. If that's all they want, then that's perfectly fine. If that serves their needs. Anyone that gets into the hobby, as I did, with an interest in emergency communication should really get the general to have the HF privileges for NVIS. But yeah, depending on why you got in the hobby and what you want out of it, tech will do quite a lot for you, all on its own. And there's really nothing wrong with staying there. And N0EMP.
SUN with a question.
SUN, go.
Just to clarify, and because I haven't looked at it recently, and if you've already talked about this, you can feel free to skip my question because I jumped in late. But there are areas of every band available to a technician class, although some of them are restricted to code only. If I believe that that's the case. If I'm wrong, please correct me because I don't want to give out bad information. And then once you have your general, all of the voice bands open up. But if I wasn't mistaken, aren't there sections in every band open even to a technician? That's the question. KC0SUN, back to net.
Negative. That's the short answer. I can elaborate on 0EMP.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got the ARRL fancy color chart in front of me, effective March 5th, 2012. I don't know if there's anything more. Well, I know there's more current bands because we got 2 new bands. But based off this, no technician on 160, no technician on 60, no technician on 30 meters, no technician on 20 meters, and this is including all modes, including CW. No technician on 17 meters, no technician on 12 meters, and 0EMP.
Yep. Okay. I was just looking at that as well. Now, that doesn't mean you don't get HF privileges. There's a lot of HF still included there. I did say a few minutes ago that my daughter was working code on, I think, 40 meters when she got her license, and she was also doing voice on 10 meters. Make sure that that's right. I'm sure it is, yeah. So she got some good HF experience. Of course, she got some third-party HF voice experience with me as well. But it's really cool to be able to work on your own license. So that answers your question. And no, we had sort of touched on that topic, but not specifically in all of the bands there. So good question. Other questions or comments, please?
NYY.
Good evening, Bart. Go ahead.
0NYY, Bart Mobile Greeley, can I check in?
Absolutely, you can check in. Did you have any comments or anything for us at this point?
I'm sorry, I just turned on the radio and heard you and realized it's Annette, and I have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, that's all right. We're talking about the various classes of amateur radio licenses and why might somebody want to upgrade. We just had comments from Greg about why somebody might not want to upgrade, depending on your use model, your ideas of interest in getting your license and what you wanted to use. We've been talking about extra privileges like voice privileges on HF, extra band area, and sometimes those technician band areas are quieter. I talked a little bit about the extra technical learning that we're required to study. There have been various things there. Anything you might want to, anything this brings up in your mind that you want to either ask about or comment about?
Yes, absolutely. When I was first studying for my first license, it was drilled into my brain repeatedly, three-dimensionally and in Technicolor, that there are two primary tenets of ham radio. One is public service, and the other is furthering ham radio. Now, the jump from technician to general obviously includes a lot of privilege enhancements and a lot more things that you can do. In my personal opinion, the most significant portion of the jump from general to extra is that you can now become a VE and test other people and thereby further ham radio. Yes, as a general, you can test only technicians, but as an extra, you can test everybody, including other extras. So to me, the biggest motivator for me to get my extra was so that I can participate in testing and help further ham radio. And that's my 2 cents. Zeroing my line back to net.
Okay. Excellent point, and thank you for that. And yes, you know, that's one of the ways that we can further amateur radio is by helping to do those tests and help others get their licenses. Of course, the other aspect of that, which could be class, which doesn't maybe have to be class related, but is certainly going to be experience related, is being an Elmer, which is our term for being someone who will personally teach someone about amateur radio, help them learn what to do, how to do it, what's involved in it, how it works, how to operate it properly, and this is something we see a lot less now, and it's not so much class-based, certainly, although you know, a lot of the time you'll find a person that is that interested has probably tested up to the extra level, but certainly not always. So that also goes along with furthering amateur radio. And we're trying to work on helping to get some of that motivation for individual one-on-one back to radio here. Go ahead. Other comments, please, or questions. This is N7GES in the TechNet.
WB0MH.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, good evening to everyone on the net. Just another comment about upgrading to amateur extra. A lot of people don't know this, but in past years, and is still valid today, that the bottom 25 kilohertz of any of the bands that are exclusive to the amateur extra is there for a reason. That bottom 25 kilohertz is where we have the overlap from our ITU region, which is ITU region 2, to the other ITU regions for DX or long distance or other country communications. That's why that bottom 25 kilohertz is reserved for the amateur extras. Back to net, WB0MH.
That one's another good point, which I've heard but had forgotten about. So that will change at least some of the DX that we might have access to. Certainly not all, but certainly some of it, especially involving certain countries. So very good point. Other comments?
MIC.
I was wondering when you would jump in here, Mark. Go ahead.
bit for when we do get around to discussing emergencies sometime, some net. I asked the same question, what constitutes an emergency, when I first started up in radio, which is some number of decades ago. And the clear answer I got back then was when the governor declares a state of emergency.
Okay, and at that point, one would assume that FCC rules can be bypassed then at that point.
Yes, the idea being do whatever it takes.
Okay, well, good to know. Of course, also, I guess there are the possibility that the government could ask for amateur radio to be shut down in certain situations too, right?
Correct. The military, the U.S. military can seize the amateur bands.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Questions or comments additional on this? N7GES.
W2CO.
Good evening, Tom, right?
Yes, hi Kevin, good evening. Yeah, I just happened to browse by on Scan and heard something about has the power to shut down amateur radio. That sounds like the NTIA to me. The NTIA can literally close all frequencies if it so chooses. And it is the FCC's boss.
Okay, so we're dealing with a fact of the bands can be shut down, and also an opinion that shouldn't be a possibility. Is that what you're saying?
Not exactly. I'm not saying it shouldn't be that way. I'm saying they have the power to do it. And I think probably the only scenario that they would have to do that is if there was a all-out war on the mainland. That's when they would do it. But I don't foresee that happening anytime in the near future, although we may have some riots here and there. Back to you.
Okay, very good. As amateurs, how do I word this? I may need to think about this question before I pose it, so I will hold off on that a bit more. Other comments or questions here?
Well, one more thing before I forget. And the reason why NTIA has all this power, even over the FCC, is because they control every frequency, including military. They control all government frequencies, all military frequencies, all aircraft frequencies. Amateur radio is just a pea in the pod there. W2CO.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anything else from anybody? I'm sorry, I just keep saying that, but trying to make sure everybody has a chance to ask questions or make additional comments about all of this here. We've sort of had comments both that it may not be necessary for everyone to upgrade depending on what they want to do, and there's an awful lot of reasons why a person might want to upgrade. Any additional comments on all this?
ASP?
Go ahead, Terry.
Well, for me, the sweet spot was to get my general class license. That gave me access to the HF bands and almost all of them, and I don't miss the little sections that are reserved for the extras. I can hear them, and oftentimes, they're really strong and really clear. So, and once in a while, I think maybe it might be nice to be able to talk to those guys. But for the most part, I found that the general class license suits me well.
Yeah, I've heard the comment a lot that the extra gets a small extra portion of the band, and as Mike pointed out, that could be a very important thing, but it also might not seem so important to everyone just because of the small additional frequency range that you get. Some, of course, have pointed out that part of the band may be a bit quieter at times. Again, you can go both ways on that. There have been a lot of very happy generals through the years, but there have been a lot of very happy extras as well. So, yeah, to each their own, but for anybody with the interest, I think those would be the motivators. We had at least one person on here this evening mention mentioned their motivation for moving up to a higher class license. Anybody else, either in past discussions or thinking process, or because of our net this evening, have desires to upgrade to some higher class license, that you'd like to talk about why that is, why that is your thought process?
K0 with a late check-in, 2 sandbaggers that want to check in, and a comment.
Okay, we had 2. Who was the other? I got LAO. Who was the other station so I can get you marked in for next?
Just me, Kevin, KD0TYU.
Okay, I will come back to you. Thank you, Joe. LAO, go ahead, please.
Well, Kevin, you can check in me and K0PRB. We were just sitting and listening. And our reason for working on the extra is a whole lot different. It has nothing to do with the extra band privileges, because they are minute. But for myself, and even Phil, mostly for myself, it's a push to learn more and have a better understanding of how radios work, how propagation works, and just being kind of an information junkie.
Well, there you go. And nothing really wrong with that. That's important as well. So, very good. Let's see. And, of course, you do get those other benefits. Excellent. Joe, good evening.
Good evening to all people out there. You've got a very, very good conversation going on tonight, and I do applaud you for having this, Kevin. My reason for going for extra, and I kind of think this is probably something that I try to tell all the students I've dealt with, is that once you start with the technician, go all the way as far as you want to go all at once. But the reason I got it was kind of, I guess you could say, a little bit personal, is that I didn't want to set into test sessions and only be able to do technicians. I guess that's a little bit wrong, but that's kind of the way I did it. I wanted to do the whole thing all at once and be able to understand what the inner workings of the testing and the rest of that stuff was. So that's my personal feel.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Joe. And glad you came by. I don't get to hear you too often over here, but always glad when you could come in. Other comments or questions at this point? This is N7GES.
W2CO, recheck.
CO, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Well, I must have missed the question. I don't know how we got off on NTIA before, but it sounds like, why do you want to upgrade? Or is this giving you a reason to upgrade or something? Well, you never stop upgrading. I was a general for 15 years and just was happy there. But about the early 90s, I got the bug. Oh, might as well get the whole thing now, So I went in and got extra and, aced it and did real good and got it. But I am still upgrading. Since then, I got a GROL, which is the commercial version of the old radio telephone license. But they have a new version of it nowadays, which is good for life. So if you can pass the GROL, some people are beginning to say real extras also have a GROL. But I have another cut above that, though. I also have the radar endorsement, which is another exam, and also good for life. But now there is another one I need. See, it doesn't matter how far you go. You're still going to be upgrading. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. W2CO.
KD0TYU with a question about that.
TYU, go ahead.
I'm old school. The GROL, is that the same thing as like a first phone license?
Yeah, the phone license, not the telegraph. But the phone, what used to be the first and second class phone. Yeah, that's GROL. But if you also get the ship radar endorsement, which is another exam, then I believe you're up there with the first phone guys. So, of yesteryear. But now there's another one called GMDSS. I just got to get it.
Yeah, I can understand why you got to do that. Do radio stations and TV stations require that they have one of those guys on board at all times, still, as they used to, say, 30 years ago?
Yes, all licensed stations have to have, well, commercial stations have to have a GROL licensee sign off on the station inspection logbook. What is it, once every 6 months? I don't know. But yes, that enables you to work in that industry if you so choose. But guess what? There ain't no jobs in that industry around here.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm from back in Illinois, and I used to do radio TV for a group of companies back there, so I was just curious about that. Thanks for that information. I appreciate that.
No problem. And I went through all of those, in a matter of 20 years. Extra, then GMD or GROL, then ship radar, and now trying to get GMDSS, which in my opinion is much more difficult. The GMDSS is much, much more difficult than GROL. But GROL does require quite a bit of studying along. So, you know, someone mentioned they were an information junkie. Well, there you go. There's no end to this stuff. You just keep going. Beyond amateur. Get the commercial license. Get the ones after that. Blah, blah, blah. Right now it's GMDSS, which is the hot ticket. But it's also very difficult. Anyway, just my 2 cents. W2CO.
Well, and we're out of the realm of amateur radio, but we're definitely still in the realm of learning and definitely in the communications and stuff like that. So, good point, Tom. Thank you. Lots more areas a person can go if they choose to do that. And very good. Okay, other comments? Any questions we got so far? Any additional comments?
ASP.
ASP, go.
Well, from what I've heard and what I'm thinking, upgrading from general to extra, does give you those little bit of extra bandwidth on the HF domain, but that's not the real prize. I guess the real prize is demonstrating that you know your stuff, because the extra exam is hard. And when you've passed it, you can pass it with pride, and you can hang that shingle on your wall and say that I knew enough to pass this exam, and that means something.
Ditto. Okay. And does that apply even if you've just memorized the answers to the questions?
I'm not going to go there, but these awards mean something. You've achieved a level of experience and working in academia. When you get your master's degree or your bachelor's or your PhD, you've achieved something and you get recognition for it, and that's a good thing.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked that, I guess. But, yeah, the achievement is important, and certainly the knowledge is important as well. So there you go. Very good. Good stuff. And one of the reasons for being in this is for learning and for achieving things. So there you go. Other comments?
MIC.
MIC, go.
Oh, lots of reasons not mentioned yet. Let's see. First of all, I'm old enough that, yes, I have a citizen's band license. And let's see, when I was this would have been the late 60s and early 70s, I listened to shortwave quite a bit. And I really enjoyed that, being able to hear people from all around the world. And I kind of wanted to talk to them. When I was studying for my technician license, a friend lent me an ICOM 706, and I put up an antenna. And the friend said, okay, you don't have a license yet, so you can listen to anything you want to, but you can't press that button, the one labeled PTT, press to talk. When you get your technician license, you can press that button, but only on these bands. When you get your general, you can press that on any band. Okay. So I got my technician, and I talked on the local repeaters, and I took quite a while, and eventually I got my general and my advanced and all that good stuff, and I talked all over the world, and I had some fairly specific reasons. I used to work as an interpreter, and so I wanted to be able to talk over the pole and into the Soviet Union to practice my Russian. And of course, the people on the other end were thrilled to be talking with a native English speaker so they could practice their English, and we had a lot of fun. And I also found myself talking into countries where, well, the internet hadn't been invented yet, but countries that were closed. So Eastern Bloc countries and African countries where there was, in many cases, no infrastructure, no telephones, no nothing. And so I talked all over the world to places that you couldn't talk to on the telephone, either because the government restricted it or because there weren't any. So eventually, and I was a very happy little advanced, and I kind of thought that the code, I did take the code tests to get there. I thought that the code requirement for the extra was absurd, kind of like milk-producing organs on a male bovine. And so when the FCC relaxed that, the following week I went out and tested and got my extra. And yeah, part of that's because when you have your extra, you definitely, you're running with the big dogs.
Okay. Well, that's a wonderful story, and I love all of the stuff that goes with it there. So thank you very much, Mark. Any other questions that inspires or comments?
KD0GN here, Don, and I agree with MIC there. A lot of those reasons why I wanted to get on the air too, listening to a shortwave and all these different things, and I had friends that were doing it and always wanted to talk on a radio, and it's the only time I'll get a chance to talk on the radio. So there's a lot of good motivations, and I agree 100%. And talking to people all over the world and things, that's right. Sorry, I didn't realize you guys had a net going. I was trying to say hi to Terry. I accidentally doubled there. Anyway, hello to Terry there too, and everybody. But anyway, just wanted to get in here and throw my 2 cents in.
Oh, you're very welcome, Don. Glad you jumped in, and good to hear you. Other people? Well, I think we covered a lot of things here. I have a lot of notes written, a lot of motivations, a lot of motivations both to upgrade or some reasons why people may not want to, and I think all of those are fair. So very good. Thank you for all your contributions here, and I hope that everybody was able to get in that wanted to. Next week, I need a substitute. I will be out of town. I have emailed Dave, and I haven't heard back from him yet. NW0DDZ, you don't happen to be on frequency, do you? Okay. So in the event I don't hear from him, anybody interested in taking the net next week? I've got a topic in place, and I will get that emailed in, but I just need somebody to facilitate it. All right, I will wait to hear from Dave, and I may be emailing somebody and volunteering them. But in any event, I'm sure we'll still have a net, And what I thought we would talk about next week, another topic that Mark and maybe others suggested, I can't remember for sure. The original title was Best Multiband Antennas. But that's pretty open. That covers a lot of different things, and it's certainly no reason we can't discuss all of them and their strengths and weaknesses. Tri-band, dual band, dipole versus collinear, inverted V versus Windham or NFED, HOAs, and what can you do to operate in those, mobile HF, which requires something special, or mobile VHF, and UHF antennas, which apparently there are some of those. So that's what I'm recommending for next week to whoever will take the net. And I think that there could be some very good discussion there, and I do hope that all of you will join in. And then I will be back with you the week following. And I, of course, don't know at that point what the topic will be, but I'll talk that over with with next week's net control, and we'll get there. But in any event, that's 2 weeks away, so we're not going to try to plan too far in advance here. Thank you all again for being here. I hope everybody has gotten something out of this and enjoyed it. And we'll plan on some of you being here next week, hopefully. And I will be back in 2 weeks and enjoying my week in Casper, Wyoming, teaching at summer camp. So take care, 73s, and a great evening to all. The repeater is now open for normal use. This is N7GES.
This presentation was brought to you by the Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Club. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.